Israel, Palestine. Just when it seemed like the world couldn't get more polarized, along comes 10/7 and the aftermath. And I wanted to talk specifically about wokeness and its relationship to, or potential relationship to, anti-Semitism that we're seeing around the country. 30 student groups at Harvard University come out and say Israel is solely to blame for what happened on 10/7. And this is not an isolated case. There's a number of universities around the country in which this is the case. People are justifying the murder of innocent civilians by terrorists. And a lot of these people have been associated through activism with identity politics / wokeness. And I guess my question is wokeness serving as a gateway drug to this kind of hate?
What you see in the most enlightened leftist part of Americans and universities is a very sort of thoughtful and sometimes not so thoughtful condemnation of the state of Israel. And this is coming from extremely feminist LGBTQ organizations saying, hey, we support Hamas. We support Palestine. And I don't understand why. This is a state that considers women to be property.
Right.
And that have no rights. This is a state that routinely murders people that are gay.
And that brings us back to my question here is like, how is it that we've lost our moral compass, our ability to make those distinctions? We now can say, because the woke set is very strongly in this camp that is saying, basically, look, Hamas are not terrorists. And the question for me becomes, can we say wokeness is actually equatable with social justice? Put another way, can one be deeply invested in identity politics without becoming a bigot? It would seem to me that is very difficult because it's very challenging to be deeply invested in identity politics without breaking things down simplistically into good, evil, oppressor, oppressed, based on skin color, based on sexual anatomy, and so forth.
I would say what you call the woke set in general is anti-Hamas, actually, at this point. I mean, it's pretty hard not to be. Of course, we both know some people.
Student activists and so forth, where are they really?
They'll say, I'm anti-Hamas, but I'm pro-Palestine. I'm not an anti-Semite, but I hate the state of Israel.
But like the crazy fact is just like the younger generation of America just out of fucking blue decided like, oh, let's just like, go with the Palestinians. And why they would like, there was a lot of radicals. I know radicals, like we're not listening to them too much, but they would be saying like Palestine, they are brown and Jewish people are white. And Jewish people like, excuse me? And it's just like, this is so weird. And there's a lot of LGBT people will be like, like.
These are very well-intentioned people. These are not bad people. They're very well-intentioned. And neither are the Palestinians. These are not bad people. They're part of an ideology that is destructive and harmful. The same with these dumbass college students at Ivy League colleges in the United States.
Right.
They're not bad people. They've been taught in an ideology that looks essentially through only one lens, which is some sort of colonization.
So I think
they don't understand that.
So are you saying, are they confused or are they actually pursuing some sort of like understanding?
I think they want to be on the right side of history, and they will not be, but they want to be, and that's a noble pursuit.
Yeah, but you know what? It was a noble pursuit when the French Revolution happened, and it led to crazy destruction.
I'm not saying that they're right. I'm saying that
I think it's high time. I think it's high time we as society start putting an end to this crap, and we start nipping it in the bud before it gets out of fucking control.
I agree.
Pamela Paul, New York Times. Whereas liberals hold a vision of racial integration, progressives have increasingly supported forms of racial distinction and separation and demanded equity and outcome rather than equality of opportunity.
That's true.
Whereas liberals tend to aspire towards a universalist ideal in which diverse people come together across shared interests, progressives seem increasingly, and I put progressives in quotes, increasingly wedded to an identitarian approach that emphasizes tribalism over the attainment of common good. This is rampant at our universities. This is rampant in the media. We have given the keys to a younger group that doesn't have a strong moral compass. Never mind what they want to do.
They have a strong moral compass.
Let's look at what they're actually doing. They don't have a strong moral compass. They are confusing immorality with morality. And I think that's the crisis we're living under. And I think that's what a lot of Americans now are waking up to, is that this shit has gotten out of control. And I guess my question is, what the hell do we do about it? Because it's real and it's tangible.
This can come to a point that gets so explicitly horrific that identitarian politics implode, and there's going to be some like, okay, I am progressive, I am far left, I'm LGBTQ, I am feminist, and I support Hamas. And you'd be like, okay, well, they hate women and they hate gay people and they want to murder Jews.
And they hate America.
So how does that connect to your beliefs? And people, could it get to some point they're like, holy shit, this is completely antithetical to everything that I just said. I believe they implode.
In theory, it could, sure. I don't see it.
I don't know that it will, but it could.
I don't see it getting that way because progressives are, again in quotes, as Pamela Paul has pointed out, are addicted to an identitarian outlook, one that divides people based on race and based on identity.
And so if we look at
is
the right, by the way.
Absolutely, but
yes.
Right, but we're talking as it relates, and we're not going to leave them off the hook in the larger scheme of things. But as it relates to this crisis, and there are anti-Semites on the far right too. We're not overlooking them, but when we're looking at the woke, quote unquote, progressive left, we're talking about a group of people that by and large equates Israel with the oppressor / white grouping. Okay? Never mind that a majority of Jews living in Israel are not even white. But when you get obsessed with looking at the world in that way, every logical conclusion that you mentioned and they should draw is difficult to
Isn't it terrifying
comprehend.
that these are highly educated, intelligent Americans for the most part that are looking at the indiscriminate murder and rape and beheading of babies and saying, well, they're colonizers.
Right.
Just from the headlines I've seen, one of the things people are coming back with is the amount of retribution being given. So we talked a little bit about sort of conditions leading up to this, but do you think that Israel is clearly morally right in behavior leading up to the attack or in the response to the attack?
Listen, injustices have been committed on both sides. I'm not going to excuse what Israel has done. What I'm deeply concerned about is how people in our country and a number of other countries, from Australia to France, have responded. France had 1,040 anti-Semitic incidents since October 7th, according to their Interior Ministry. Australia and many other countries have as well.
On the Sydney Opera House, there's a group screaming, "Gas the Jews! Gas the Jews!" Right. This is happening in Paris for a long time. They haven't been able to open any Jewish school because no one will insurance because they know that someone will fucking blow it up. This is to pretend like there's an equal amount of anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hatred in the West is just to be completely delusional. supporters of these radical Muslim groups are totally dedicated to eradicating
Right.
the Jews and the Jewish state.
That's the
And it's
geopolitical
not
part
something,
of the
and it's something that they say. They say it constantly. They say this is what we want. We want to kill all the Jews. And on the left, all you hear is, prior to 10/7, is criticism of Israel.
Mhm.
What about Saudi Arabia, who killed 100,000 Muslims?
Right.
Well, you know, I'm not going to step in and tell another culture how to, you know, I don't want to be a colonizer. It's the concept of cultural relative where you just sort of like,
Right.
I'm
Look at
in
what's
no
happening.
place to judge.
Right.
No
Side
one
there.
murdering Muslims more than these radical Muslim states.
Mhm.
These groups are completely left off the hook by the West because
Right.
we want to be politically correct, and it's got to stop. And you have to grow up. And
Right.
you have to say, hey, there's not a comparison between Israel and Hamas.
Is it high time we start putting a checking? We start checking this stuff and we start standing up to it. I remember a friend a few years ago was saying to me, "Man, it's crazy how university officials have essentially given the keys over to an indoctrinated student body, right? And anytime now they scream, you saw this at Evergreen, you saw this other places, they just bow down to students who really don't know what the fuck they're talking about."
And that makes you part of the far right, which is bizarre.
It doesn't, but you mean you'll be perceived that way.
In this country, yeah.
One sign that this movement is so off morally, that is so wicked, is the fact that many of them don't actually care about Palestinian lives.
Of course not. They don't care about Jews.
If they did, they would urgently be calling for the end of Hamas. Because here's what we do know. Hamas threatens Israel. Israel will take a lot of Palestinian lives. Now, leaving our emotions aside for a moment and the morality of that equation, if you actually care about Palestinian lives, and you know that's what Israel's response is going to be, because it has been that all along, and you still support Hamas, you are more invested in hating Israel and Jews than you are in saving Palestinian lives. Really,
That's insane.
They're so blinded by their hatred.
Can you
of
actually?
Israel.
Is that actually how you feel? Like that's
That's
fucking
not how.
bonkers.
That's not how I
actually.
feel. That's what's happening. There is a moral and a logical disconnect occurring among some of these Palestinian supporters. If you're not interested in getting Hamas out of the equation, you're not really interested in saving Palestinian lives.
We're looking at two sides, and we kind of have different expectations for both of them, right? I mean, if you're an adult and your friends come over and they have an 8-year-old and who's autistic and comes in like starts kicking you in the shins, you don't beat the hell out of them because it's a kid, right? So we have different expectations. We expect Israel to behave in a very ethical and moral way, and we don't have those expectations for Palestine or Hamas.
Is that a fair discrepancy in
It
expectations?
seems to be a problem.
Mhm.
And so and so when Hamas can come over and just start murdering indiscriminately, like, well,
And it be justified.
you can't. I mean, look at
Right.
them. It's just a kid, you know. Just get and having a hard time.
Yeah.
But in this case, you need to hold them both to the same standards, I think, which we don't do at all.